Next, we're going to turn to our featured presentation by Stephanie Hoops, National Director at United for ALICE, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. Ms. Hoops has overseen the expansion of ALICE from a pilot study of the low-income community in Morris County to a national effort with ALICE data for all 3,000 counties in the United States. Today, she's going to share how we can use this data in our transportation planning, most especially our long-range plan update. Before joining the United Way of Northern New Jersey, she taught at Rutgers University here in Newark and Columbia University, as well as teaching in the United Kingdom. Ms. Hoops has a doctoral degree from the London School of Economics, a master's degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and a bachelor's degree from Wellesley College. Stephanie?
Thank you very much. And I think we got the technology working. I am delighted to be here, and it's very funny that being from this area, that I got here via Salt Lake City when I met Dave at a AMPO conference out there, and that's what it took to connect us, and glad it worked out, and delighted to be back here in Newark. I really enjoyed my time teaching here, and it's great to see the good work that's happening. Y'all are super busy. I'm like, how long are these notes? So you have quite a package every month. So thanks for fitting me in, and I'm here to introduce somebody that you probably already know, but maybe not by name, and that's ALICE. So it's an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And we all know ALICE. Many of us have been ALICE, but ALICE it works in jobs that we need to keep our economy running smoothly, and yet struggles to afford household basics and support their family. So you probably ran into several ALICE workers on your way here today, maybe getting your coffee, dropping a child off at childcare, security guard in the parking lot, the bank teller, just all kinds of jobs that we really need in our economy. And yet the wages don't cover those basic costs in the place where they live. So think about the ALICE you know, think about maybe your own ALICE experience, because there are a lot of numbers that come along behind this, but just it's important to remember we're talking about real people and real families. So this work comes from United for ALICE. We are founded and powered by United Way of Northern New Jersey. And these measures have been developed to better understand what's actually happening in our communities. It started as a small pilot in Morris County and now has spread across the entire country. And we provide data for all 3,000 counties. And we work with partners across the state, here in New Jersey, but across the country as well. So it's really nice to be here in my home state and working with you to make a difference here. So let's dig into the numbers behind the idea. And basically, the current official measure of financial hardship is the federal poverty level. And according to that, 10% of households in New Jersey are struggling. But when you look at what it actually costs to live and work here, and New Jersey is expensive, I don't need to tell you all that, but another 26% of households are struggling. So in total, more than a third, 36% of households in New Jersey are struggling paycheck to paycheck, just trying to cover those basic costs. And we create a what we call the ALICE Household Survival Budget for every county in the country. And it's just the basics of housing, childcare, food, transportation, healthcare, a small technology line, and ALICE pays taxes. And I was just did a radio interview with the London Times on Saturday, and I had to explain, yes, Americans pay for their health care. So they got a chuckle out of that. But it's here in the budget, and that's the blue column in the graph that you see. The yellow is the wage for a full-time personal care aide, common job, and you can see that that doesn't cover those basic expenses. The gray column is the federal poverty level. and you can see how low that is compared to those actual costs. So that's what we're trying to address is we have this outdated measure that was developed when Lyndon Johnson needed a measure for his war on poverty, and it hasn't been updated to reflect the current economy, the current way expenses are allocated. And the federal poverty level is also the same number across the country. So the federal poverty level is the same here in New Jersey as it is in Mississippi, as it is in Manhattan, as it is in San Francisco. And so it doesn't take into that huge difference in the cost of living. So we then check how many households are earning below that survival budget. And we see Alice in every county in New Jersey. And yet the rates do vary across the state. The lowest rate is 25% of households are below that Alice threshold in Hunterdon County, and it's as high as 56% in Cumberland County. Here in Essex County, it's 43%. And the data go below the county level as well. And so doing a deeper dive here in Essex County, we see big variation within counties. And Essex County may be one of the biggest. It ranges from 8% below the threshold in North Caldwell and Glenridge to 63% here in Newark. So a few miles apart, you have a very different level of financial hardship, and something important to recognize when you're doing your planning. And how can you help folks who are living in these different areas connect to all the basics in that budget? How do they connect to childcare, healthcare, education, shopping, and of course, work. So these mapping can be very helpful in that. Another thing that we do with the data is break it down by different demographics. One of the biggest is race and ethnicity. We also do age, household composition, urban, rural, a lot of different categories. But I do want to point out some really big differences here in New Jersey by race and ethnicity. And among the three largest groups, Black, Hispanic, and white, we see significant differences in both the poverty level, but even more so in the ALICE numbers. And we all know the reasons for that, a lot of historic and systemic barriers, and yet they are still having a huge impact today. And I always like to emphasize, ALICE is in a lot of the key jobs that we need. On the website is a detailed table of occupations, but here are some of the most common in the US: retail sales, home health aides, cashiers, fast food, customer service reps, laborers, drivers, all jobs that we are very familiar with, and a significant percent are below that ALICE threshold, even after getting significant wage increases in the last couple of years. And that's something that we've been tracking, not only the increase in wages, of course, but the increase in inflation. And so just when ALICE thinks that maybe they're starting to catch up, they are seeing increases in those wages. Inflation is increasing that bit much more. So it's like running and you're going up that sand hill, you get up a couple steps, and then you slide back down a little bit. And as a result, we're hearing a lot of frustration in our communities, across our voters, and I think some of that came across in the election outcome. So ALICE is important in a lot of different dimensions in our communities. So I wanted to just tie this in a little bit more into your planning and transportation. And so just some ideas to help you incorporate ALICE and ALICE's perspective. But you have a huge opportunity to make a difference for ALICE. And that's why I am so appreciative of the chance to come talk to you, that you have the ability to make investments that can really change the outcome for a lot of families. So some questions that you might ask as you're digging into these projects is, will this project make transportation or any aspect of ALICE's budget more affordable? Will it make transportation or any aspect more accessible? Will it, make transportation closer? Will it help Alice connect to that child care center? And then will it improve quality? So those are really three dimensions where you all have the ability to make a big impact. We've been working with the New Jersey Department of Transportation, and they are fantastic Alice advocates. We really appreciate that. And I've had a chance to do a couple of presentations with them, so I'm borrowing one of your slides, and really appreciate the way that they're thinking about it and considering Alice factors at the very beginning when the concept is being developed, not something that's tacked on later, but embedded from the beginning. And taking some time to either walk in Alice's shoes or perhaps ride along with Alice. So thinking about Alice when you're doing your traveling and literally talking to Alice riders, Alice constituents, and hearing what their challenges are. Another thing the Department of Transportation is working on is developing an Alice checklist for evaluation. So if you kind of have a standard set of questions or criteria that you can just make sure are being included, makes it a little bit easier. And then the last thing I want to point out is Alice was probably working on your team. Alice works in all kinds of organizations, including government. And so as you're talking about these challenges and thinking about these problems, to be always respectful and appreciative of these different dimensions. So just some high level thinking, but what is all this planning going for? What is the ultimate goal? And one way that we like to look at it is, the American dream of if you're working hard, you should be able to support your family. And so what are the levers that you all have access to help make that happen? So anything that in the planning that can help increase income for Alice. So building better in infrastructure that's an inclusive economy and businesses that pay above survival wages. And so, asking some hard questions, bringing any new job may not be the best answer, but a job that actually can support a family needs to be considered as part of the criteria. And then there's a lot that can be done to decrease costs, connecting low-cost housing to jobs, as well as the basics of childcare, schools, grocery stores, healthcare. Another place that Alice is often really impacted is in disasters. So when we think about Superstorm Sandy, with electricity out and businesses closed for days, even weeks in places, that meant Alice didn't go to work. And a lot of Alice workers are paid by the hour, and if they don't go to work, they don't get paid. So they didn't have the luxury of a salary job and working from home during Superstorm Sandy, or a lot of times during the pandemic. And so we're foregoing those wages. Bills were continuing. And it even happens in a snowstorm. So when you think about clearing those roads so folks can get to work, that means somebody can get to their job and get paid. And without that, it puts a family behind without even, anything major happening. So I just wanted to highlight that dimension. And then also ensuring that the funding invests in Alice workers in all your projects, including in your office. I'm just going to mention a few tools and resources, but there's lots more on our website, unitedforalice.org. But one tool especially I think is great for planners, and it's our economic viability dashboard. So I'm going to start with introducing it by asking if any of you live in a perfect town. This is Richard Scarry's Busy Town. You may remember growing up, but do you live in a town where most jobs pay a sustainable wage, where housing is affordable for most families, and there are wonderful community resources available to everyone? Anybody live in that town? Well, according to the EVD, the Economic Viability Dashboard, there are two places in New Jersey that almost get there. And so the EVD looks at work, housing, and community and provides a lot of ways that you can look at indicators in these areas. But there are 2 communities in New Jersey that score above average on all 3 of those. And they are Union County, the part Northwest, Summit, and Westfield, and then Southern Somerset County. So actually, some states don't have any towns that are communities that fit in this, and usually it's just one. So there's something that's happening here, but a lot more work to be done. There's a lot more local data on our website, and I think for a lot of your planning to dig down and get zip code, county subdivision, all that. There's a spreadsheet with a data sheet that you can download, so that might be helpful. A lot of interactive data tools, and one is, for example, is our budget calculator. You can put in your state, your county, your household composition, see what that budget is, and see if that household then earns above or below that ALICE threshold. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if y'all have any questions, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions from the board? Yes, sir.
To your left. Chairman?
I should know it was you. You always have a question.
I always have a question, thank you. I know you've been in this space for a long time. Are we getting more Alice's out there, or like, what's the trend look like right now?
Yeah, that's
the past decade or 20 years?
That's a great question. So we've been tracking from before the Great Recession, and we saw a big uptick during the Great Recession, kind of 2007 to 2010. Since then, interestingly, the poverty rate has been pretty flat, and the number of ALICE households has continued to tick up. And so that's happening through different administrations, different economic conditions, that tells us that something really different is going to have to happen to change that trajectory. And that's a really good question from my old neighbor.
And as a follow-up, on the average, what percentage of the ALICE income goes to housing?
So it's usually the largest criteria, the largest budget item, unless you've got 2 or more kids in childcare, and that would then become your largest item. And it's also probably the hardest to tackle. So from your perspective,
right,
you got some work to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.